Hey guys, how are you doing? So this is a walkthrough of Lab 5-1 from our textbook, and I have the textbook up on the screen here so that we can see exactly what the book is asking us to do. Now, in Lab 1, we're trying to take some data from the state of Oklahoma. So the state of Oklahoma, it says, captures purchase card information for each of the state agencies to determine where resources are used. All right, so state employees in Oklahoma, they receive a credit card that they can use to make purchases. And so our job here is to get this data ready so that we can analyze it. All right, and I'm going to do something a little different here because the labs that we've been working on, I feel like they're not at a level high enough for you guys. I feel that as LaSalle grad students, you guys are able to do a lot more than what some of these labs are asking you to do. So what I'm going to do in this lab is I'm going to walk you through the SAS software. SAS is a statistical software that we can use for data analysis. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to open up your remote desktop. And we're going to use SAS 9.4. So SAS 9.4. So again, this is a statistical software that can be used for data analysis, right? So I'm going to go to SAS 9.4, and we'll just wait for this to open up. All right, so SAS opened up, and let me show you a little bit about SAS. Okay, so SAS is it's a software, again, that is used for statistical analysis. But what's different about this software is that it's code-based. So we perform statistical analysis by writing code. All right, so you'll learn a little bit of code hopefully in this lab. And so what I did is I just maximized, so we have 3 windows here. This is called the log file, so this keeps track of the things that we have done to our data. I usually clear this, so I just hit clear, right? So we get a fresh start. This will keep track. It's like a receipt, an old school receipt. You tally up the items that somebody's buying at the register, and then you get a listing on the receipt of all the items that were purchased, right? So the log keeps track of that. As we manipulate the data, the log will keep track of our manipulations. And so before I start working, I always like to clear it out. This is the output window. I do not use this output window because it's not very good. Instead, what I use is the results window over here, which is over to the left. We also have the file explorer here within SAS, but what we'll be doing is primarily in this window here. So this is the editor window. This is where we write our code to perform our data analysis. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is we want to import the data that we're going to be using. So we're going to go File, Import Data, and we're going to click Next. And then we're going to just browse and go to the location where you save this data file. All right, so I've navigated to the folder where I had this file stored, and we're looking for either XLS files, which are Excel files, or XLSX, which is the newer format of the Excel file. So we're looking for, this is Lab 5.1, so I'm just going to look through this data here. I'm looking for Lab 5, there it is, Lab 5.1. All right, so it's an Excel file. We're going to click Open, right? Just give it a minute. Okay, and then we'll click OK here. And then, oh, connection found. All right, so our connection failed there, and let's see the reason why. It was because I didn't read the screens, and I picked an Excel file when it's actually a CSV file that we're working with here, right? So we want CSV. Now this should work. All right, so I'm going to say Options. I'm going to do Browse. Where is this located? I'm going to go 5-1. Here it is, Open. That will take just a minute, and hopefully this time we don't get that same error message. All right. So data analysis is messy. It hardly ever goes correct the first time through. It's hardly ever perfect. So we got it straight this time. We're going to click Next. And then it's saying, where do you want to save this file? What do you want to call it? So we're going to put it in the work library of SAS. That's just the default folder where we store our data. And I'm just going to call this A01. All right. Now I'm calling it A01 because, well, you know, it's our first version of this file, so that's why I'm calling it 1. And then SAS doesn't like you using numbers to start a file name, so I just put the A in there to satisfy SAS. But it doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you want. So I'm going to click Next, right? And oh, this is asking, well, do you want to save the code that is being used to import this data? And you can if you want. So you can save it to, I'm going to save it to, let's save it to the desktop, right? So I'm going to say lab 5-1 code. All right, so I'll do that, and then we got everything we need. We'll click Finish. All right, and we'll wait just a minute. This data should import, and when it imports, we will check the log, and it says the import was unsuccessful. Oh man. So file extension CSV is specified as invalid. Error, the live names. Okay. So let's play around with this a bit. So let's go open up the code file now. Let's go open program, and we're gonna go to our code. Let's open this. So this is the code that was used to pull in this data. Now it might not like some of the naming conventions of my file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run this again, see what the error is that it kicks out. Okay, so a big part of data analytics is troubleshooting, and so let's click the run button here. Let's submit this code. Let's have SAS run this code to import this data and see what happens. All right, you can see now it looks like it's working okay. It's saying the step is running, and let's see what happens. All right, so for whatever reason, it looked like that code was split into multiple lines by default. Maybe SAS didn't like the way it was written that way. So let's see if this imports now. Since we now ran the code to import this data file. All right, let's see what this looks like. All right, so it looks like SAS has stopped working, meaning like it completed its job, not that there was a failure or anything like that. We ran this code, and then if we check our log, now it looks like it imported properly. Okay, so you can see we have now imported 394,904 rows of data. So that's unbelievable. That's an incredible amount of data. Now, you would not be able to work with this data in like a Microsoft Excel or a Google Sheets. It's just there's too many data points in the file for us to try to do anything meaningful in Excel. It would literally use up all of Excel's horsepower. Excel would freeze because there's too much data. Okay, so we got to use a software like SAS to look at this. All right, so how is SAS set up? All right, so I saved this import code, and let's see. Let's go back to the code. All right, so I'm going to close out. I don't need this other code window. I'm going to close window 2. I'm going to close window 1. I don't need those. Right, and then I have my log. My log looks like it works. I'm just going to say clear. I'm going to keep track of the next thing I do, not the last thing. I'm going to save this code. You'll notice up here that you'll have a star next to the name if you haven't saved it. And then I want to go to libraries here. I'm going to look at the work library. So here is the data that we just imported. Okay, so you can see now it looks like a normal Excel file. We have data, calendar year, calendar month, agency name, last name, first initial, item description, amount, merchant, transaction date, post date, MCC description, and then whatever this ID number is. So it looks like it came through pretty well. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see, we do indeed have 394,904 observations in our data set here with, a bunch of fields across the columns here. All right, so what does this lab want us to do? Okay, so they're saying, what do they want us to do here? we want to, before you get in the lab, okay, for this lab, you will transfer purchase card transactions to match the format of the AICPA's audit data standard for the procure to pay subledger. All right, so they basically want us to rename a bunch of the columns here. All right, so let's see what they want us to rename. Okay, so we're going to rename, here it is, it starts right here. So we're going to say, let's put this on a side-by-side here so we can see these things. Oh, I don't want that, where's SAS? There it is, okay. All right, so I got these side-by-side. I can actually drag this, I don't need this to be so big. I can close out of this window. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start renaming these things. I'm going to say, now the syntax is like the way you write the language. In SAS, you're going to do what's called a data step. So we're going to say data. We're going to create a new data table, A02, let's say, and we're going to create that from our first data table that we just imported. Now, why am I creating a new version of it? Well, because I'm going to make changes to it, and if I mess up, I want to be able to go back to the original untainted data. So here I'm going to say set, and set is saying to SAS, bring in the previous version and copy it to this new version A02. So set, and then I'm going to do run. Okay, so I'm going to copy A01 into A02, and run says to run this code. That's all that means. Okay, now you'll notice we use this indentation format here when we program in SAS. It's it's not necessary. This would run if we didn't write it this way, but this is just an easy way for the eyes to see what's going on. So I'm just going to run this, see what happens. So I'm going to say run, and you look at the log file, what happened? Okay, it worked fine. Everything came through correctly. All right, so now we have a copy. But not only do I want to copy it, when I copy it, I want to rename the variables. So I'm going to say, let's see what our, so I pull it up. If you just Google SAS, rename variable, right? You'll get this handbook. It'll tell you how to do it. Well, if I look at some sample code, it says rename name is equal to first name. Okay, so score 1 to score 3 is new score. So we're going to take the old variable name and say equal to the new variable name. Okay, that's how we're going to do this. Let's bring this over here so we can have it as a reference. And so I am going to, where's my SAS window? I always lose it. All right, where's my SAS window? Let's bring this up. There we go. All right, so I'm going to say rename. Actually, let's put this on a new line so I can kind of see this easily. So I'm going to say rename. And what do they want us to rename? Let's go to our Adobe here. So we want to say agency NBR is equal to the new name, which is business underscore unit underscore code. Okay, and then I'm going to say the next one, agency name will be equal to business underscore unit underscore description, and then the next one is item description is equal to purchase order line product description. Right, so these are all like AICPA naming conventions. We're going to say amount is equal to purchase order amount local, and then we're going to have merchant is equal to supplier account name, and then transaction date is equal to purchase order date. Oops. And then we have post date is equal to entered date, and then we have MCC description is equal to supplier group, and then row ID is equal to purchase order underscore ID. Okay, and then that is, I believe, all that we want. And so what we're saying is rename this variable agency B NBR, right? So that is where'd it go? Here it is. This agency NBR, which I guess stands for agency number. We want to rename this variable to business unit code. Okay. So if we've written this code correctly, this should run and it should rename all the variables. So let's make sure our log is clear. We can keep track of whether or not this works. I'm going to click save so that we have the code. Now, I don't want to run the whole code. I don't want to re-import the data, but I just want to run this section of the code. So all you have to do is highlight the section you want to run and click this little guy running, and that will run the code. All right, so let's see. We likely got an error here because it ran so quickly. So, all right, so it's saying we have an error in the way we wrote this. So there's syntax error expecting one of the following. And key, okay. So it looks like, let's go back to our reference code here. When we do the rename, what did we, oh, so we should have, after the set statement, we should have a semicolon. Oh man, missing one semicolon, you see that? So, all right. So let's run this again, all right? Let's run this again and see what happens. All right, let's see. Let's see what we got. So the error we got now is purchase order line product description is longer than 32 characters. All right, so that is too long, that variable name. We gotta shorten it. Let's say take off the TION. Let's see if it works now. See, that's still too long. Let's try to abbreviate some of these words here. Perch, ord, and then let's just say LN. And okay, let's try this now. Hopefully this works. Oh no, I ran the whole thing. So it's going to take a minute to re-import that data. Let's see what happens here. All right, so that was no big deal. It's re-importing, so we just have to wait for this to re-import, and then we can see if the second part of the code runs. All right, so it re-imported, and looks like this time our renaming code worked. And so if we click on A02 now, we should see different variable names here. So business unit code, that got renamed business unit description, and then so on and so forth. It looks like our renaming worked, so now we have a new copy of this data, but it now has the correct variable names, the correct column names according to the AICPA standards. What else is this problem asking us to do? So we renamed it. Actually, why don't you, as your first screenshot for this lab, take a screenshot of this, this renamed table, okay? And then they're asking us, now create new columns to transform the current data to match the audit data standard. Okay, so we want to create new variables. We're gonna so we want we want to create. So basically, we want to create 3 new variables using the data from 2 or 4 other variables actually. All right, so we want to let's go back here. All right, we'll go back to our code. We're gonna do data A03. So we're saying the SAS create a new copy of this from the previous copy set A02. Right, and now we want to say a new variable. We're going to say purchase order fiscal year is equal to the variable 2020. Is there a variable named 2020 in here? Let me see that. I don't know what they're saying here. Let's see. Purchase order. Oh, I think they're saying all variables should have the value 2020. Okay, that's fine. So that will work. Okay, so we're going to give all the observations, all the rows, the same value, and then we're going to say entered by is going to be equal to. We want to combine the first initial and the last name into a single text variable. Okay, so how do we do that? Now there's a concatenate function in SAS. All right, so let's look that up. Let's say SAS concatenate function. Okay, so just cat x. All right, let's use. Actually, we can use the more basic one. So we're gonna say entered by is cat, right, which stands for concatenate, and we are going to combine the fields. So we're going to say first initial, and then we're going to add let's put a space. So I'm going to say space, and then the last argument here will be last underscore name, right, and then that should do it. All right, and then finally we're going to say purchase. Oh, what did I do? Come on, Tom, learn how to type. Purchase order local currency. Okay, I'm going to say this is equal to USD for all observations. Okay, and that should do it. Let's see. Alright, save this, make sure my log is clear. I don't need to do this, but I always like to do it so I can keep track of whether or not the last step that I did worked. Alright, so let's go back to our code here. I'm going to click save one more time. I'm just going to highlight this section and run only this section. Let's see what happens. Did we get any errors this time? No, looks like it worked pretty well. Let's see. If we go out to the right here, so we have looks like purchase order fiscal year 2020 entered by, and then we have local currency. Now I don't like the way that this looks, so it looks like there is there's like an extra space in here in the name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip the spaces around. Let me see. Let me just Google that here. Let's see. SAS strip spaces. Let's see. Strip. Yeah. So I'm going to say strip. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put a function inside of a function, like we're kind of in Inception, right? So dream within a dream. So I'm going to add this argument here in my formula. I'm going to say strip. Oops. Strip. And what this is going to do is remove any spaces before and after the first and last name that's already stored in the variable. Alright, so all I want is only the characters that are in the first initial, no spaces, get rid of all the spaces, put a space after that, and then add the last name without any spaces around that. Alright, so this should clean it up a bit, let's say. Alright. run this. And let's see. Looks like it ran okay. And when we look at this, now we should have a cleaner looking variable out here. Yeah, and see now all those extra spaces are all now gone. Okay, so that looks good. So what we can do now is finally, the last part of this lab is we can, the variables that we just used to create the new variables, we can delete the originals. So we can say delete first initial and also last name. Okay, and that should do it. So now I'm going to save this again, clear out my log, and then run this last part again. See what this looks like. Do we get any errors? Let's see. Delete first initial. Expecting a semicolon. Delete first initial. Let's see. Maybe we've got to do two separate statements. Let's see. Delete last name. Let's see if we do it this way. It shouldn't have a problem, but I don't know. For some reason, it didn't like it. Let's see. Delete first initial last name expecting a semicolon. What is going on here? Oh, so now I remember. So it's I used the wrong syntax, the wrong keyword. So I'm just gonna put this back to the way it was, and it's not delete, it's drop. Not delete. Oh, come on. All right, this should work now. Sorry, I just had to look at the handbook here of SAS on how to do things. I'm gonna click run. Let's see what it does here. Boom, it works. A03. You can see we got rid of first initial last name, and now we're just left with the entered by. All right, so that is it. You guys have done this lab. Thanks for humoring me here and working through a SAS example. Hopefully this exposed you a little bit to coding. And the cool thing is, once you write a set of code, you can save it, and then you can copy and paste it and reuse it and recycle it as you go. So it's a little inefficient up front when you write code compared to doing it in Excel. But if you have to do it for large data sets and you have to do it on multiple files, the advantage of SAS is you can copy and paste code and reuse it and recycle it, and it really cuts down on the data processing time. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon. Take care.